I was in the zone. Heat, I'll take with 32-mile-per-hour gusts. I departed my hotel at 7:23, which was 7 minutes before my target departure of 7:30, so I'm happy about that. Had my alarm set this morning for 5:30, and I woke up at 5:28 in a complete panic thinking I overslept because of how much light was coming through the window. Today is going to be all interstate riding, so it's not the most exciting thing, but it is the most efficient for covering a lot of miles, which is my goal for today. At my first pit stop of the day in Albert Lee, Minnesota. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. But this is where I turn south on I-35. Pit stop in New Virginia, Iowa. It's, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 miles south of Des Moines. I've lost track. I was in the zone, but finally decided I probably need to stop to get a little break, stretch my legs. Definitely needed to unhydrate and then rehydrate. Be getting back on the road here in just a few minutes. Back southbound, not too much farther. I think it's like 140 miles, something like that, to Kansas City. So I'll get back to it. I wanted to get an idea of my fuel range and real-world conditions while loaded down, so I intentionally waited until the low fuel light came on, and then I stopped in Winston, Missouri. After getting gas, I walked around for a bit
and drink some water before getting back on the road. As I got into the Kansas City area, I was pretty happy that I'd made good time and arrived before rush hour. Unfortunately, that didn't prevent me from making a mistake while making my way to the hotel. After settling into my hotel, I took a short ride for some Kansas City-style barbecue. I'd love to see recommendations for Kansas City barbecue joints if you have any.
It is 7:43. Getting on the road now. On today's agenda, I will end the day at home. It's a total of about 466 miles that I will be doing today. I do have 2 stops that I'm planning to do today, so gonna break up the day a bit with that, and then I'll be home when it's all said and done. There was a nice, friendly lady at the hotel, one of the cleaning ladies. While I was checking out, she asked me where I was from, and I told her and let her know that I'm heading back there today. And she told me to be careful because the temperatures are going to be in the 90s today. It's going to be a hot one. You know, I thanked her, assured her that I would be careful. But inside, I was chuckling to myself and thinking, I'll take temperatures in the 90s with no rain over rain, fog, thunderstorm, that type of stuff that I had in the first 2 days of the trip. Heat, I'll take. Storms, fog, no thank you. So while stopped, I decided to check the weather. I already knew there was basically no chance of rain. I was just curious about the wind speeds because it does seem rather windy, which it is. It says 18-mile-per-hour winds with 32-mile-per-hour gusts. They're basically all out of the south, which checks out with what I was experiencing. It's just a headwind. Of course, that's not great for fuel mileage, but I'd rather fight a headwind than crosswinds.
Coffeyville, Kansas was the site of the final demise of the 19th century outlaws known as the Dalton Gang. On October 5th, 1892, 5 members of the gang attempted to rob 2 banks simultaneously. The group of outlaws tied up their horses in an alley and caught the attention of a few locals while walking to the banks. Brothers Bob and Emmett Dalton entered First National Bank, while another brother, Grat Dalton, entered Condon Bank along with fellow gang members Bill Powers and Dick Broadwell. Word spread quickly that the Dalton Gang was robbing the bank. Inside the Condon Bank, an employee lied to Grat Dalton, telling him the safe was on a time lock, which couldn't be opened for another 10 minutes. Grat believed him and decided to wait. Meanwhile, outside, townspeople gathered. Some with their own guns, and others obtained guns handed out by the local hardware store. These vigilantes surrounded the banks to confront the Dalton Gang. When Bob and Emmett attempted to exit First National Bank, they were met with gunfire and quickly retreated into the bank and exited through the back door. At roughly the same time, citizens began firing rounds into Condon Bank. Within a few minutes, a bullet struck Dick Broadwell in the arm. Broadwell, Grat Dalton, and Bill Powers decided it was time to flee the bank and get back to their horses. In the ensuing moments, the Dalton Gang exchanged gunfire with residents of Coffeyville. When the shooting ended, 4 members of the Dalton Gang lay dead, and Emmett Dalton sustained 23 gunshot wounds, yet somehow survived. Emmett received a life sentence in Kansas State Penitentiary, but he was paroled after serving 14 years. He lived the rest of his life in Los Angeles, working as a real estate agent, writer, and actor. The members of the Dalton Gang were not the only casualties of that day. City Marshal Charles Connolly was shot dead along with 3 Coffeyville residents that fought against the Dalton Gang. Okemah, Oklahoma is the birthplace of folk singer legend Woody Guthrie. When Woody was 15 years old, his mother was labeled insane and committed to the state mental hospital. Only later was it realized that she suffered from Huntington's disease. Not long after Woody's mother was committed, his father moved to Pampa, Texas. For a time, Woody stayed behind in Okemah with his older brother and wandered town to town on his own. In 1929, he joined his father in Pampa, which is where Woody began playing guitar. He soon formed his own band and began writing his own songs. In the mid-1930s, Woody was one of the hundreds of thousands of people that migrated to California from the Great Plains during the Dust Bowl. By 1937, he was performing on the radio in Los Angeles. It was during this time that Woody started gaining more attention. In early 1940, Guthrie hitchhiked from Los Angeles to New York City and quickly immersed himself in the folk music scene there. It was at this time that he wrote his most well-known song, "This Land Is Your Land." Guthrie continued to write and record music throughout the 1940s, but his health was in decline by the latter part of the decade. He last performed publicly in 1950. After an initial diagnosis of alcoholism and schizophrenia, in 1952, Guthrie was diagnosed with Huntington's disease, the same neurodegenerative disease which affected his mother. Woody spent the final 11 years of his life in various hospitals before dying of complications from Huntington's disease in 1967. It's been nearly 6 decades since his death, but the legend and influence of Woody Guthrie still lives on today. Woody's family scattered his ashes in the waters off Coney Island, New York, but you will find a memorial headstone in the Guthrie family plot in Okemah, Oklahoma. Once back on the road, I felt like I was practically home, despite the fact that physically I was nearly 200 miles from home. Nonetheless, I was back in somewhat familiar territory, and these felt like easy miles at this point. The heat continued to rise as the afternoon wore on, but I took it as a welcome home sign. I even hit some welcome home traffic once back in Texas, which I didn't take as kindly. Fortunately, the traffic was short-lived, and I was able to get back to highway speed in no time. Before long, I was back home, pulling my bike into my own garage at the conclusion of a successful 7-day trip.